Okay, let's skip the usual slow build-up today. Just imagine waking up in a country where the government simply doesn't exist anymore. No police, no army, absolutely zero leadership, and completely open borders. We are jumping straight into one of the most terrifying, genuinely cinematic, and just utterly chaotic periods in human history. We're talking about a time when one of the largest empires on Earth, Russia, was completely gutted. It was standing right on the razor's edge of total, complete annihilation.
So you really have to ask, what actually happens when an empire of that size just collapses? Well, I'll tell you, it is an absolute nightmare. When the central power of a massive nation completely breaks down, it doesn't just mean you get a new leader. It means the total breakdown of everyday life. We're looking at a terrifying reality where internal strife is just tearing communities apart, and foreign invaders are crossing the borders with total impunity. I mean, there's literally no one to call for help. The treasury is gone, so you can't even fund a defense. It becomes a completely unchecked free-for-all.
And that brings us to the absolute bleakest period of this empire's history. When you look at the historical sources, they paint this picture of just total devastation. The land was left entirely empty, desolate. Normal people were pushed into this extreme, unimaginable level of poverty. Think about it. If you were a civilian back then, your daily reality was looking out at the horizon and literally seeing the smoke of burning villages. The wealth of the entire nation was stripped bare. Your very survival was a question mark every single day. It's actually a pretty stark reminder of how incredibly fragile civilization is when the institutions we just take for granted disappear overnight.
To really grasp the sheer, overwhelming scale of this disaster, you have to look at the forces tearing the place apart. You didn't just have one enemy here. It was like a hydra of destruction. First, you've got these massive, heavily armed Cossack gangs led by warlords like Zarutsky, literally seizing whole cities. Then you've got foreign Polish invasions setting up camp and occupying the capital itself. But maybe the most terrifying, the roaming, completely ruthless gangs of Lisovsky. The sources say Lisovsky's men just moved constantly like a plague, slaughtering people without a single shred of mercy. The empire was quite literally bleeding from 1,000 cuts.
But amidst all this unbelievable carnage, we need to zoom in on one very specific, critical threat. The occupying Catholic Polish forces realized something important. To permanently conquer the nation, they had to extinguish its future. And that future rested entirely on the shoulders of one young boy. He was the only viable candidate for a new royal dynasty, the single symbol of hope that could actually unite this fractured, broken nation. The invaders knew this, so they started this ruthless, highly targeted hunt to find this kid and eliminate him for good.
Which brings us to this tiny, obscure place, the village of Domnino. A heavily armed, elite military unit of invaders is rapidly closing in on the area where they know this boy is hiding out. They march right into the region, intimidating the locals, aggressively demanding directions to the remote Ipatiev monastery. That's where the boy and his mother are sheltering. The enemy is, literally steps away from changing the course of history forever.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the absolute asymmetry of this encounter. Look at this. On one side, you have this terrifying, highly trained, heavily armed military force, guys who are totally accustomed to burning down cities and taking whatever they want. And on the other side, you have the guy they happen to stumble upon to ask for directions, a simple, vulnerable, completely unarmed local peasant named Ivan Susanin. It is the ultimate mismatch. So Susanin is standing there face to face with the enemy. They're demanding to know the way to the monastery, and in a split second, this simple peasant connects the dots. He realizes exactly who they are hunting, and he knows exactly what's going to happen to the young future king if he points them in the right direction. Right there, in the dirt, Ivan Susanin makes this fateful, unbelievably heroic decision. He decides that the boy's life and the future of the nation is worth a whole lot more than his own.
So, Susanin looks at these terrifying soldiers, and he lies. He promises them exactly what they want to hear. He looks at them and says, "I will show you the monastery. Follow me." Just imagine the incredible tension of that moment. He turns his back to an entire detachment of armed killers, pretending to be their obedient guide, while secretly setting in motion this desperate, suicidal deception.
Because Susanin doesn't lead them toward the monastery. Not even close. Instead, he marches them in the exact opposite direction, deep into the stark, impenetrable wilderness. Picture this, a freezing, pitch-dark, dense forest. It's basically a labyrinth of nature filled with these endless, deadly, freezing swamps. He leads this heavy military column deeper and deeper into a trap from which there is absolutely no escape, just plunging them right into the freezing abyss of the marshland.
The climax of this whole deception is just brutal. Deep in the freezing mud, the trapped soldiers finally realize they have been completely played. The monastery isn't here, there is no way out. In this blind, panicked rage, they draw their swords and brutally hack Ivan Susanin to death. But it's too late. The peasant had already won. By the time he falls, the soldiers are already doomed, just swallowed up by the freezing swamp. Susanin makes the ultimate sacrifice, immortalizing himself in history just to save his nation's future.
So the crucial point is this: the boy is saved. The immediate threat of assassination is completely neutralized by one man's incredible bravery. But let's take a step back and look at the macro picture here. The empire? It's still in utter ruin. The nation's treasury is entirely empty. Those roaming gangs, they are still out there, and the economy is effectively dead. Yes, the boy survived, but the throne he's supposed to inherit is basically sitting in the middle of a burning house.
Fast forward a bit to February 16, 1613. The scene shifts from those violent, muddy swamps to a stark, quiet, freezing winter day at the remote Ipatiev monastery. A massive, grand delegation made up of the highest nobles and the most senior clergy in the land finally arrives. They have traveled through this entirely ruined countryside to find the very boy that Susanin died to protect.
And who do they find? A 16-year-old boy named Michael, standing there with his mother, the nun, Martha. The delegation literally falls to their knees, begging this teenager to take the crown. But the historical sources tell us something so incredibly human here. Michael and his mother are terrified. I mean, they know about the roaming gangs. They know about the extreme poverty. Initially, they give a flat, absolute refusal. They literally tell the delegation that taking the crown is a death sentence. The entire burden of a broken, bleeding empire is being shoved onto the shoulders of a frightened teenager.
The delegation is pleading. His mother is weeping. The nation is actively burning to the ground. Can a terrified 16-year-old boy, who just moments ago was hiding for his life, step up to resurrect an entirely dead empire? Well, we're going to leave it right there for today. Think about the sheer weight of that moment. Make sure you join me in our next explainer as we discover exactly what this teenager decides to do.